the Transforming Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. It is October 4th, and it is 5:12, and we will begin now. We are, I guess we don't have to have a quorum, but we are ready to roll on this. The first agenda item is going to be status update on teacher incentive allotment presented by Dr. Corton.
Yes, good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Neola, senior team, and audience. We wanted to come forward tonight to share an update with you on our teacher incentive allotment. Last year was our data capture year, and so this year, as we compile all of our data and start looking at statistics, we certainly wanted to come back to our board to share some of the updates with you. Everything we're going to be sharing with you tonight is actually projections, and so our TIA specialist will go over a few more details with you. So at the dais there, you should have a one-pager that gives you an overview of teacher incentive allotment. So this is, I'm not going to have a pop quiz at the end of this. I'm just going to give you an overview because we've had a few months between the last time we talked about teacher incentive allotment. So our local designation system actually consists of 3 different components. 50% of that is student growth, 30% is for T-test ratings, and 20% is for teacher leadership and attendance. And so those are the 3 components that we look at when we're going to be talking about our local designation system. So we certainly wanted you to have that. The other 2 pieces of information that are on your one-pager, there is a breakdown of funding by campus just to kind of give you a frame of reference when we're looking at teacher incentive allotment. And as Mrs. Galvan comes up here, she'll expand on that. But it's really just a reference for you. Then at the bottom of your one-pager, you have the different levels. So we have recognized, exemplary, and master level teaching, or master level teachers that can be designated through the teacher incentive allotment. So we certainly wanted to come back, like I said, give you a one-pager, just a frame of reference. But we really wanted to come to you tonight to share a little bit of good news about teacher incentive allotment. I'm not sure if you all have had an opportunity to meet our teacher incentive allotment specialist, but I'm going to step aside and introduce you to Erica Galvan.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for your time and attention. So I'm going to be going over our TIA data that we have so far. And like Dr. Corton mentioned, it is projections. First, I'm going to go ahead and what we're going to review is a timeline, a financial overview, the designations that we have, like the number of designations, and some next steps. So here is our timeline of events as we stand today. So we are doing the last final cleanup on the data file that is going to get submitted to Texas Tech University, and that is due October 20th. So that is coming up in the next couple weeks. From there, we are going to wait to get our approval response from them, and that comes in February in the spring. So that is when the designations then become official in February. That's why they're still just projected now. So from there, we'll be submitting some paperwork to SBEC to get the designation tied to the teacher certification. So it will show up on their teaching certificate. And then the next part is the fun part, the payout to the teachers. And so this first year, even though we're already talking about the summer, this is going to count as their first year of their teacher incentive allotment. And so we're going to pay out a lump sum in July or August, possibly as early as May. We're still, kind of just going back and forth. The deadline to pay out funds is August. August 31st is they must be paid out to the teachers. And then in September, that's when TIA will settle up the funds because we are going to be paying upfront on this first year of the TIA allotment. Okay, so now into our projected designations. So we do have a TIA eligible teaching assignment. Our pool of teachers is 716. That's who is in an assignment that tests with CLI and with NWEA. So from there, the teachers that we have projected that will be receiving a designation, for level 1, which is recognized, we have 139 teachers. That's 106 in elementary and 33 in secondary. For exemplary, we have 91 teachers. That's level 2. So that is 71 in elementary and 20 in secondary. And our master level teachers, we have 16. So master's, if you refer to the one-pager, master's level is the one that has a payout of an average of $22,000 to $25,000. So we will have 16 projected in the district. Okay, so out of those 246 teachers, this is the breakdown of the allotments that they're going to be generating. Now, these are based on averages because the allotment does change every year based on that campus's eco-dis population. So every April, they get recalculated. So those that you have on your one-pager, they're from this past April. So this next April, it'll get recalculated again. So it'll be within a ballpark, but it'll change a little bit. So these projections are based on averages. So with our 246 teachers that we're projecting to get an allotment, we will be generating over $2 million, which $2,054,146 will go directly to the teachers. That is 90% of the allotment. 10% stays with the district, and that's this other $228,000. That stays with the district to support fees and support efforts and professional development for more teachers to hopefully earn TIA. So, as a recap, we have the lives of 246 HCISD teachers will be directly impacted by over $2 million. And that this is in 1 year. Their TIA allotment designation lasts for 5 years. So this will be every year. Yes.
Oh,
No,
I'll
yeah,
wait till you're done.
Okay, I have the last piece.
Sorry.
Yeah, so this is going to be, just to close up, we're going to discuss some next steps.
So as far as next steps go with TIA, we really have had a chance to sit down and look at calibration with our T-test system. And so I think that all of y'all are familiar with T-test, but that's our teacher evaluation system. So it's given us an opportunity and space to really go back and just talk about that tool. The other thing is it has also given us an opportunity to look at how we're going to leverage our human capital. As we're looking at our teachers, and particularly our designated teachers, we want to know what is going on in that classroom. How can that teacher kind of spread the wealth around the district, and how can we leverage them? Because obviously, if they're designated for 5 years, they are doing something really great in their classroom. So that's part of what we're going to look at. And then lastly, this is a great recruitment tool. So as we have looked at teacher recruitment, we know that teacher recruitment is critical and making sure that we're going to have the very best. And so part of what we're looking at is also using our TIA and our 90-10 split to be used as a teacher recruitment tool. And then certainly as we look to the future, we want to expand. This is our first year with TIA and our first group, and so we're super, super proud of that. I will tell you that as Ms. Galvan spoke a little bit about the timeline, we have been looking at, we have to spend that money by the end of the summer. However, if it's possible, we're also looking to advance that to May. And so our teachers would actually close their year with their TIA incentives being sent to them as early as May. So excited about that as well. And with that, I will open up to questions and conversation from our board.
So just a quick question. As far as and I just wanted to, I'm sure you have some complicated formula, algorithm to get to these numbers, but I'm just trying to think through this, and I wanted to maybe see if you can respond to this. So as I look, the 90% anyway, the 90% of any the part that's going to go to the teacher is $2,254,000. If you divide it up across evenly, and I know it's not evenly, that's $83.50 per teacher. Now, I kind of would like to know kind of what the range is in terms of how much of it is it going. What's the dollar amount? If you can, I don't know if we can disclose that or not, but I'd like to kind of have an idea what the dollar amount is going to the recognized versus the exemplary versus the master. If that's not, or is that pretty complicated in and of itself, or can you just give me?
It's in the one pager. If you
Is
look
it-
at the colorful boxes
This
at the
one,
bottom.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
on the
Oh
front
gosh, I
end.
didn't get that.
It's on
So
the
we
front
did
end.
want to give you all, just to give you a ballpark of what that's going to look like. So let me talk a little bit about that funding by
So
campus.
It's 6, 12, and 22. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're at Austin
It's on
Elementary,
your- Sorry, guys, it's on your left-hand side on the little insert.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
so if you're at Austin Elementary, The bottom, if you're at recognize, you would have an allotment of 6,266. If you have exemplary, you would go up to 12,532, and a master level teacher would have 22,887. And so based on the campuses that our teachers are coming from, that's really what their allotment, how their allotment will be generated. And it is, the allotment is recalculated every April to fit the demographics of that particular campus.
And then another question has to do with the breakdown of recognized, exemplary, and master. And again, I'm sure there's some, algorithm and complicated formula you use for that, right? I mean, I know it's not simple, just to kind of, you're not just thumbing it and say, this one,
So,
I like her, or I like him, or whatever. But,
Sure.
but as I'm looking at it, of all the teachers that are the 246, 56.5% are recognized, 37% exemplary, 6.5% master. And my question is, and I'm sure it's going to take some time to track it regionally and statewide to see where we're at. I would just like to know, is that kind of how it's going to be across the state, or is it different per district? Are we trying to eventually get 20%, master of all the allotments? Are we trying to get, going, how are we looking at that?
Yeah.
Like as a spot in time, and how are we thinking about that going forward as we look at sort of these these recognized teachers?
So I'm going to kind of take you all back to the one pager because I think this will help.
Okay?
So when the state pushed out the teacher incentive allotment, if you look at this yellow box down here, see where you have the yellow, the green, and the blue? So our goal as a state, if you look at it, it says recognize top 33% of teachers. So when the
Right.
state pushed this out, that was their goal.
Okay.
Our goal would be to be very close to those percentages, which overall, we fared very, very well. And so and the reason we looked at those percentages is because when your percentage is aligned to these goals, then that gives you a really great advantage to make sure that your teachers are actually going to be designated. Because once you send forward all of your teacher information, then Texas Tech University does a thorough review to make sure that we're not giving out incentives that maybe weren't earned the right way. And as far as like how we got there, Dalia Garcia's in the back, and she's sitting very cool and collective. But I will tell you that this was about 1.5 years in the making. We have a database that, as we have been collecting all this data, we knew we needed to have infrastructure that was going to support it. And so later this week, on Thursday, we're slated to push out what we call a TIA estimation tool. So every teacher in our organization that falls under the local designation system will be able to look at that and see how many points they earned for the T-tests, for attendance, and for student performance. And based on all that information, that's really how we got to the numbers.
But so then if that's then, 246, is that 33% of our teachers? How many teachers do we have total?
So it's not quite. So we are close. So, from our recognized status, we're at about 21% of our eligible pool. On exemplary, if you see here, it's estimated at the top 20% of teachers. Since then, it's been updated to 15% in the state, and we are at 17%. And then for master's level, it's 5%, and we are at about 2.5%. So we're because we have a pretty rigorous system. It's part of House Bill 3, certain standards, and so we kept those standards for meeting student growth and for T-tests. So we're a little bit under.
And I'd be curious to know, this is for future meetings or just in our Friday reports or whatever, but how do we compare versus other districts? So I'm assuming, Veronica, that some districts are, they may have 10 teachers out of 2,000,
Sure.
maybe. I hope nobody has that situation, but they may not be. Is there going to be some districts that just don't have that many at all? They're not even anywhere close. Obviously, we're not where we needed to be. We didn't, but
Well, we're doing awesome.
we're doing good. But are there going to be districts that are just way down because they just don't?
I can tell
How do you see
you,
this playing out?
I do, and I'll try to get those percentages for you of the ones that have already been funded, and then we can do that again later whenever we get our positive designations. I will tell you that about a week or two ago, we had a group here. It was a regional meeting that we held for teacher incentive allotment. And I think we take for granted sometimes in HCISD, we just do things really, really well, and we always have a system. But it was interesting to hear their conversations because they started with a handful of teachers. And let me tell you, when we submitted our application and we first visited with TEA, they said, "You're very ambitious. Our caution to you is start small with a very small population." Well, we wanted every teacher that was eligible, every teacher that could do it, we wanted them to be in the pool. And so we went a little bigger than most districts, and just coming together, making sure that we were working with principals to ensure T-test was correct, working with Dahlia and her team to make sure that every part of our system was ready to go, because we knew that it was going to be a heavy lift. And so it was interesting to hear their conversation last week, or a couple of weeks ago, because some districts don't get a designation. Like, they submit all of the information that we, have on our end, and then they get word back that says, somewhere along the way, this is not jiving. Your data is not jiving. In our case, we have run so many algorithms, and like I said, I had to hand it to Dahlia and her team. It is incredible to have a true profile for every one of these 700 plus teachers, so that they could know that this is your estimation tool. So I would be curious to see this next round, to see how many are being funded. I will get those numbers for you, but I will say that they're probably a little lower, because even in that regional meeting, from Laredo all the way down, they said, how many teachers, like how many groups of teachers are you going to have that can qualify? And Erica proudly said 716. It's just, I think in our district, we opted to do something a little larger, knowing that our teachers deserved it. And not that other teachers don't deserve it in other districts. It's just we knew we had the internal capacity to get it done.
And are we going to have a situation where this is going to be public knowledge, to where we're going to know what other master teachers are over there teaching in La Feria or, San Benito or wherever? Is that going to be something that we're going to, see in the next few years?
We are actually, whenever in the timeline, part of the process includes that we work with the State Board of Educator Certification, because if you are a designated teacher, that's public record. You go on to SBEC, you type in the name, and it automatically pops up. And so we did look at, there was an Erica Galvan, but not our Erica, another teacher. Anyway, but it says in the corner. And so think about how it's going to impact Mrs. Scoggin and all of her process too, because when we are looking at teacher recruitment, it's critical that every applicant that comes in, and we're probably going to update the application because we've talked about that, if they're a designated teacher, then we need to start looking at that differently with talent acquisition. What does talent acquisition look like? And I know Mrs. Scoggin is already working on that with her team. Huge value add, but it will, once it's signed, sealed, delivered, every one of our teachers will have a designation attached to their certificate for 5 years. And so the other big thing, because we care a lot about our people, financial literacy is critical. So let's talk a little bit about payouts. So we have, let's say, a teacher at Austin Elementary that's going to get $22,000 as early as May, as late as August. In a traditional year, we'll have a payout in December and a payout in May. But this year, we have to do the lump sum because of the timeline, right? But if you think about a teacher, they have the capacity to have about an extra $30,000 in their pocket with this. So I visited with Julio, and I'm like, we probably need to do financial advisement prior to them getting the money in their pocket. Like, how do we position them to really think smart about these incentives? They're great. The other thing, though, is that we want to make sure that they're going to leverage those funds, because it's pretty easy to say, 30,000, yes, let's go, right? So that's the other part of our work that we'll be doing, so.
Other questions from the committee?
I think at the very end, you were talking about, so they keep the designation for 5 years?
Well, as long as they stay in the classroom.
Okay.
Because the whole point of TIA is to recruit and keep the best. So if they stay in the classroom as a teacher, they keep their allotment. If they retire or they move up to an administrator, they'll lose it.
So the allotment continues for the 5 years?
They'll have her for 5 years, yes, as long as they're like teaching in a teaching capacity. They're locked into their level that they earn as the minimum. If they, in subsequent years, if their data looks better, and we can submit them for a designation to a higher level. So if they earn recognized this year, but now, the learning gaps are going to be closing, and so if this year they earn master, we can submit them for master, and they'll have that for 5 years.
Yeah.
So
Can they
it's
go
to keep
down?
these teachers. No, they can't go down unless they leave, then it's canceled. But they'll keep their allotment for 5. And then it'll drop off their certification.
Can you just share with the board about when a teacher moves and the potential impact if they were at Austin Elementary, but they make a decision either to go to Crockett Elementary or even to another district, what those impacts look like?
Well, so as long as it's a public school in Texas, because it is tied to their certification, and they'll have the designation tied to them for 5 years, the allotment gets recalculated at their new campus where they're moving. So if they move to a campus with a higher payout, their payout will be higher. If it's lower, a lower eco-dis population, and it calculates lower. And if they leave to another district, that's a little trickier because depending on the timeline, sometimes the funds stay with our district and sometimes they'll go with the new district, depending. And so other districts might be structured differently where they don't have a 90% payout, a 90-10. Some have 80 or 70% going to the teachers.
I think the intent around TIA was to really recognize those teachers that are working in high economically disadvantaged campuses. And so that's why as you see the number, there's a lot of variance because it's all tied back to the number of economically disadvantaged students at a particular campus. And so if you're working with high need students, then high need compensation, right? But that decision to move for people that have these designations now has to be thought out. And, so we did have one teacher that had a designation at another district who came to us. And so the campus where he was at had a higher economically disadvantaged population than the campus he was moving to here. And so he had to think about a move because it was going to impact how much funding he was going to get, right? And so as it has created a lot of implications for us as we look at people that submit transfers and things of that nature. It's the advisement piece as well that becomes critical because there will be an impact if they're making those kinds of moves. But just the opportunities that our teachers have, I'm just thrilled. I want to commend the entire team because as Dr. Corton mentioned, we were bold in the decision to include as many teachers as possible. We have 1,200 teachers in our district, and we had 700 plus that we created an opportunity for. I'll tell you that as you look at other districts, some had very small numbers, under 100 that they were even considering, even despite the size of that district. And so I'm just really proud of our team for the work and effort that was put in to give as many teachers an opportunity to be able to receive this type of incentive monies and support. So just super excited for our teachers. We're looking how soon we can get this out to them as soon as we get the approval, the approval from Tech. They're going to be super thrilled. A lot of them already have an idea. They already know that they're in a position where they will get something. They don't know exactly what it's going to be. So on Thursday, we're going to start that communication out to them, and they'll be referring back to this little chart that's in front of you. And so a lot of happy people on Thursday that will have an idea of what they're going to be receiving. So kudos to them.
Dr. Mooney?
So you answered a couple of my questions. Thank you for reading my mind. Does this work counterintuitively also? So I'm noticing Stewart Place is probably the lowest, right? And so how many teachers do we have there that are falling into this program?
Erica has a breakdown by campus. So So we can share that with you all.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because,
it does.
There's no incentive there.
Sure.
Or a lower incentive.
It does, and we had a long discussion about that, because remember, last year, was it last year, the year before? We took almost an entire year to design it, and we had a teacher focus group, and then we had a campus representative group. And so in that campus representative group, we told principals, send us one additional teacher aside from your teacher of the year. And then just with our team, it really, there's so many things, so many factors whenever people decide what campus am I going to, right? And while this is great, there's other factors that they're going to consider. And our teachers felt like, I'm going to go to the school that best fits my need and the culture that I best fit with, and this is just a bonus. So we did talk about that. And even if they're at Stewart Place, it's still still a sizable incentive for them.
yeah.
And so we did talk to our teachers about that, because we wondered if it was going to hurt us at some of these campuses where the incentives were not that large. But they felt like, no, I'm going to go to the place that I feel like I belong. And then if I get 5,000 or 10,000 or 15, great.
So, but there's a $12,000 variance between Stewart Place and Travis Elementary.
Right.
Roughly, right? And so if I start at Stewart Place, and I think you answered this question, but I just want to clarify, if I start at Stewart Place and I move to Travis, then I get a bump up.
That is correct.
Perfect, okay.
Your incentive is recalculated based on that campus.
All right, thank you very much.
Last comment, I'm excited for a couple things. Number one is that you seem to be pleased. I don't know much about this stuff. I know you do, Doc, but you seem to be excited about what we were able to accomplish because we set high expectations. We had a great plan, a great strategy. We had a secret weapon, and Dahlia back there that was able to sort of gather all the data and that kind of stuff and put all the numbers and stuff, and it corroborated. Obviously, at the state level, it matched, and they said, yeah, that's right, that check, yep, this worked, yep. She gets a check, he gets everything worked out right. The excitement is that, for me, I think we need to keep having higher and higher expectations, and I know with all the design teams and everything else we're doing to create, to have the best, highest quality teachers and delightful learning environments in every classroom and every campus and the right culture and everything else. I think we're going to get a lot of people saying, my God, I want, and there's going to be a lot of teachers step up and want to get to that level.
Sure.
So the second part of my comment is, Dr. Nail, we need to put a lot of pressure on the commissioner, and I'm going to shoot him a message over this, that why are you trying to hold us back in regression to the mean here and trying to say, no, take it easy, just start small and things like that. I mean, that shouldn't be the message coming from the commissioner. So, I think we need to start, talking to them and saying, hey, guys, I mean, let's aim high and not have a situation where at the state level, we're getting told like, no, let's just, kind of go slow. And so I think we need to start putting pressure like, hey, if our teachers deserve it, let's give it to them.
Sure. And in our district, like I said, we're very blessed. I think we have exceptional systems and a tremendous support network to get something like this done. Like innovation and design, like that's kind of who we are all the time, right? And so I will say that just based on the conversations from a couple of weeks ago, that's not typically the case. And I think a lot of it is in that, and having a culture that fits TIA, because the other thing is that we looked at it as a way to leverage the entire incentive system to elevate the profession of teaching. And that's the first thing that we said. This is a way to elevate the teaching profession. But we're so intentional, and that's part of who we are. And I think a lot of it, like I said, super, super blessed. And they keep calling Erica, and she's like, can I tell them? I'm like, yes, share, because we want every teacher to be able to have access to these funds. But yes, we decided to go big, and I'm glad that we did.
Well, and the beauty is that it's not competitive. If every single teacher qualified, even better. So this is not a competition
Right.
between one teacher and the other. So when we talk about leveraging these very successful teachers to work with others, making you better does not hurt me in
Right.
terms of the monies. And so that becomes that next more important layer, because to Veronica's point, how do we leverage this to just increase the talent and increase those opportunities and make create a system where we really have these tremendous teachers.
It's not
So,
a zero-sum game within the district.
exactly.
Correct.
So, I mean,
And if there's two things that you take away, yes, all the celebration. Remind people just of that. And secondly, if they didn't get designated this year, you got another year, like forever, right? Every year, we're going to submit our data. And now that the system is ready, we're ready too. And so those are probably the most frequently asked questions. Like, when is this money going to run out? Well, we're hoping never, right? And so that's what we're hopeful for, so.
If I can make just one more, I'm sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I do want to share one thing that actually, as part of, because I'm new in the role over the summer. So what Dr. Corton and I, kind of worked on in a system is I probably spent the last 2 months going to every single campus to go and present. Hey, I want to clarify and answer any questions about TIA. Because if you didn't get it this year, if you didn't get it last year, you have a fresh start. You know NWEA now, like you know how it works. It's not new. T-test, we're good to go. Now they know attendance counts. All these pieces, and so at every single campus, it was received very positively. Tons of questions, lots of questions. Even people, if I think I'm going to get this designation, but can I move up? And yes, you can. And so people are they're very knowledgeable about it now, and they're working towards it. And of course, I still have feelers out, right, with my friends at different campuses. And they'll tell me, they're like, Ms. Galvan, the teachers are working, they're like, we don't know if it's TIA. I'm like, it is TIA, because they're excited.
And once that first wave of checks comes out, it's going to make it very real. So we're super, super hopeful that in May, as early as May, we'll get that out. And here's the best thing. Teachers that want to retire, they're like, hold on, wait, let me look at my calculations. So if I retire, you lose it. Oh, I'm going to stay for a little while. I can do it for $22,000, right?
so you get to get those recognized exemplary and masters
Teachers
for a little bit
longer,
longer,
right.
probably.
Absolutely, because it also now calculates into
It
part of their
does calculate.
TRS.
Wow, that's what
And
my
it didn't
question
at first, and so they opened it up, and so they're like,
that's
maybe
a
we'll
big
stay
jump.
just a little longer, right? It's people we don't want to lose.
I was just
So-
going to make a real quick, I remember when we started talking about this during COVID, and you presented, and I was all over. I was like, man, how are we going to do that? And you were so excited about it, and the questions were just like, but how, right? And you've done it. So just want to congratulate you and your team, your excitement, the fact that you're rolling out so well that everybody knows about it. Congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. Excellent job.
We're excited, thank you.
We can do better, we can do better.
Yes, we'll continue, we'll
can do more,
continue.
right?
But out of the gate,
Let's-
it's all right.
Let's wrap this session up. Let's give these ladies a
Erica.
hand, Dahlia, our leadership here, as well as all those who were awarded. That's fabulous, so.
Very
thank you so
excited.
much. And thank you, Ms. Galvan, for your work. We're glad to have you in this role.
You've been so fantastic.
All right, our next order of business is using student agency to maximize academic success. Dr. Corton.
So, Madam President, board members, Dr. Neola, senior team, and audience. So on the heels of the previous conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about how we are supporting our teachers to meet the growth and the academic goals of our students. And so you have heard us talk a lot about blended learning, and so I'm glad to have Dr. Rushka here, and she'll be coming up here in just a little while. But we wanted to come back and circle back around with our board because we've talked a lot about TLF 2.0 and student agency. And so student agency, we keep hearing about that, and tonight we're hoping to show you just a little glimpse of what that looks like in action. So I'm going to go back a couple of months. I believe we came back to you all the end of the spring or early summer, and we talked about how are we going to really make sure that we're going to address the learning gaps of our students coming off of our pandemic. And so our answer was really looking at this continuous cycle of improvement, not just with leadership, but particularly with our teachers. And so we framed something called the Teaching and Learning Framework 2.0, because we've had our TLF for a while. We just refined it. And the refinement came towards the second half of that page, where you see these 5 cornerstones. So Dr. Rushka had been studying blended learning. We were looking at the data. You all probably recall that leaps and bounds above the rest with our blended learning studio campuses. And so what we did is we adopted the 5 cornerstones that align to blended learning and said, how do we make these fit in our organization? It's a process, though. We know that if we were going to address all 5 cornerstones, it really had to be a journey, and we needed to bring people along for that journey. So for this first year, we said we're going to focus intently on 2 of those cornerstones, those being data-driven instruction and assessment, and also student agency. And we chose those 2 because if we were going to get personalization and individualization correct, we were going to start there. And so this is going to definitely be years of a process, but we're going to start today by sharing a little bit about these 2 cornerstones. So I'm proud to bring back up here to visit with you all Dr. Rushka, our blended learning specialist.
Good afternoon, everybody. So like Dr. Corton mentioned, this is definitely something that we've embarked upon that is going to take a while. We know we're in it for the long haul, but we also know it's what's best for kids. And because of that, before we jump into the process, I just want to share a little bit of what this looks like in the classroom. Like we said, data-driven instruction and student agency are our focus points for this year. More specifically, student-led conferences. Sounds like such a simple concept, right? And it really is. You're going to see that in just a second, but I want to set the stage for you. So what you're about to see is just a very short little clip of a 2nd grader at Bowie Elementary with his new 2nd grade teacher. And so they have been together. They've been practicing student-led conferences for about 4 weeks now, so we're new at the process. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things. If you'll notice in the video, they will be referencing a binder, just as what we call a student data tracker. And then I also just want you to kind of listen to how they're interacting with one another and what they're saying. Alrighty, so here's a little highlight video.
So we're looking at different components here, right? Which one do you think you need to work on?
I would say these 2.
Those 2 because why?
Because this one's already past everything. And these ones are just going down on red because they're already on red.
Okay.
Going nowhere.
So if this is text fluency, and fluency means the
Saying the words
ability
fast.
to read, right, correctly, what are some things you could do to help you get this higher?
Take my time, sound them out, and then say the whole word and just keep going and going and going.
Okay, good.
Just keep going and going and going. I love that part at the end. So we know that this doesn't just happen, right? Kids don't come up and just all of a sudden start talking about where they are and things that they could do. It's a process, right? And so because of that, we knew we also had to kind of phase in what does a student-led conference look like? Phase in both for the kiddos, but also for our teachers, because although they're used to having these conversations and building relationships with students, it may have looked a little bit different in the past. So there's really this 4-phase process. Number 1 is you got to have something for them to talk about, right? And that's really their student data trackers. And so that's phase 1 is really the implementation of those student data trackers. Phase 2 is really what you just saw right now, where the teacher is kind of prompting the kid throughout their binder, but starting having those talks with their teacher. Then finally, we want that to switch. We want those roles to switch, where the kids are really asking the questions, leading the conversation, and the teacher's there just to facilitate. And then finally, the pinnacle, right? We want it to then turn into where students are having these conferences with their parents, really triangulating that support and relationship between the teacher, the parent, and the student, okay? So we also know, and we realize this too, that we had to break that up not only for our teachers and for our students, but we also had to do that for organization as well, right? And so we scaffold the journey and phase and approach for those 2 cornerstones this year for data-driven instruction and for student agency in the realm of student-led conferences through this. We chunked it, right? And we also knew we had to provide the support. So what we did is we really restructured how we were providing support to our instructional leaders on that monthly basis where they would get that learning and engagement with us and others, right, and collaborate. Because the good news is, some of this was already in our system. We had a lot of campuses using student data trackers, right? And so we give them that chance to collaborate and learn during those layers of learning pieces on a monthly basis. But we also knew we had to provide the support and set the expectation. And so our districts, all of our campuses across the district are really following these expectations, with the fall being, all right, y'all, we got to at least implement one student data tracker with the focus of math and reading, okay, in the fall, okay? In the winter months, we're going to have them implement kind of what you saw up here, just that teacher-student interaction, using their data binders, getting them prepared and ready to talk about their data. And then finally, at the spring session, holding those conferences, those student-led conferences, hopefully we're at that point, with either their teacher or their parent, okay? And so just like we are advocating for personalization in the classroom, we also know we have to personalize for our campuses. And some of our campuses are ready to take this and run. And so they do have the opportunity to accelerate depending where they are as a campus. Okay? So it's a funny thing, like I said in the beginning, simple concept, right? It is a simple concept, but it has huge implications and promise for how we can maximize our students' success. I'd be remiss if I didn't share these two pieces from our teachers from last year that really implemented this frequently. They said, I've never known my kids the way that I know my kids this year. And I'd ask them why. It's that interaction on that frequent basis, having kind of letting go of some of the control of I have the data, giving it to them, the academic ownership. They took ownership of their learning. And then that's the other beauty part of it. They talked about their students not only saying, this is where I'm at, but this is why, and this is what I'm working on, and this is why I'm working on that. So they took ownership of that. So again, simple concept, huge rewards and implications, and with that, I will turn it back over to myself and Dr. Corton for questions and conversation.
Can I want to tell you something that I know we saw today. It was awesome. We went into a second grade classroom, and we had a little boy come up to us, show us his binder, and the entire class was talking to us about the data and what they were going to aim for and how they were tracking it. And they were so excited and talking about how they help one another. It was awesome. I mean, he came up right up to us with the binder and was talking to us about it. It was awesome. Awesome.
They were talking about their color coding system, and we're shooting for blues and greens. And if you have a yellow, this is what it means. And if you have a red, and so it was all a data tracker.
Talked about
work. And not
fluency,
at a
all of
studio
that.
school, mind you.
Not at a studio school.
It was not at a studio school. It was one of our other schools. It's just the teachers that have made the decision to accelerate their programming. But it was, I agree, Doc, it was beautiful to see.
Thank you for corroborating, Gina, because first that was my question. I was going to ask you. I said, did you have to get the actresses from the conservatory to be in your video?
We did, and it worked.
Can you
No,
get
no,
those?
no.
No, but
They like actually talked. They were talking just about that, like about fluency and taking their time. And it was like you couldn't have like picked a better video. I mean, really, that's what they were talking about this morning.
Well, I want to. This is amazing, and I love even the two little sort of anecdotes from the teachers you shared at the end. Really kind of means that it's impactful, right? So my question is, when you look at it as you're taking this to scale, I wonder how this type of activity is going to inform several things. Number one, self-learning. Like, I hope that at scale, we're elevating, right, the importance of self-learning to these students. I mean, that's the goal, right? It sounds like, you spoke of that. But I hope we're doing that. But I also, I hope that it helps inform the relationships we have with parents and parent agency, what the conversations they should be having with their little ones. Now, I wish I had figured this out. I had children way too young. I was like 12 or 15 or something. So I didn't know any of this. But I wish I had figured, because what I see parents talking to kids about is, oh my God, mijo, mijita, you look at, oh my God, you're so smart. Look at these grades, and oh my God, this is incredible. Da, 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 da. They're putting the value on the wrong thing, right? It's like, look how smart you are. In other words, let me make you lazy because, you know, you're just smart and you know everything, versus putting the value on the effort, right? Oh my
Right.
God, look what you can do when you
Right.
work hard, when you study hard, when you listen to your teacher, when you read yourself, when you look at all this reading you're doing, look, oh my God, it's paying off, that effort, right? How can we at scale create parent agency so that they can be the shoulder partner for the teachers?
So Dr. Neola's over there with a big, huge smile, because we didn't want to overwhelm you all and the system, right?
Well, just speak slowly,
So-
and we'll understand. If you speak slowly, we'll
En
understand.
inglés o español. No, 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 no. So here's a preview of the next part of it, because absolutely with parent agency, you get the report card and it's a 95 or a whatever number, and that means what, right? So part of the next phase of the work, we're going to let campuses accelerate where they can, or where they're ready to. The other part, though, that Jess is working on is really looking at how do you look at the skills that our students are learning, and how do you create this scorecard almost, or resource for parents to say, you know, you think about that video, that young lady should be able to sit with her parents towards the end of the year and say, like, this is what I need to work on. And the parent really has to have a resource. And it's not just about saying, look, here are the skills that we're learning. It's also saying, and by the way, at home, like, use these links that we're giving you so that you can help your student, because all parents want to help their kids. But you get to a certain point and you're like, tapped out with algebra, right? Like, nope, can't do that. Well, we need to give them some type of skills. You don't have to sit and be able to solve an algebra problem. What you need are resources so that you can guide your kids and say, have you gone here? Have you gone to Khan Academy? Like, what does that look like? And at the younger ages or the younger grades, it's really about saying, like, here's a tool, use it, and this is how you can really create a partnership with our classroom. And so, like I said, we that's the next part of the work. It's just like bite-sized chunks so that everybody is coming along with us and it's palatable. I'll tell you though, they're getting there really quickly.
Well, and I'll tell you, you know, we're, because Veronica mentioned the report cards. And so I'll go back and reiterate what she said. So when a student gets a 78, well, what does a 78 mean? And all that a parent can really say is, well, you need to study more, right? That's just that's all that they can say. And so I will tell you that we are looking to make some bigger changes with our report cards, to where we're really looking at standards based. These are the things you should be learning, and this is how you are doing along those with regard to those areas. And how do you continue to grow? How do we support you at home? Which is very different, and it doesn't happen many places, but it's really making sure that our students are learning and mastering content and not having that 75. Even the kid with a 95 can still grow. In fact, we were having a conversation with kids today about growth. That's where your focus needs to be. How do I continue growing from wherever I'm at, right? And so really looking at how do we change our curriculum and instruction and programming to really ensure that every child is moving forward. So just super excited at the work. I think you just saw a snippet, but I think, imagine when all of that is everywhere.
And just to follow up, and I think that makes my point as well, I mean, is that when you make it about the effort, then it becomes about the learning, and the
Correct.
grades don't even matter.
Correct.
You know,
And
even
you're competing with yourself
right?
to be
And so
better.
even that
Just
there's
that.
something in it for the guy, they got the 70, 75, or the 90, 95, and so we just want to put value and effort and make it about the learning, and then you just get out of their way, you know.
Well, and even on TIA, Doc, as we were looking at that program, a big portion of TIA is if your kids are growing,
Yeah.
right? It's not that your kids are passing the assessment.
Right.
It's, are your children growing? Are the students in your class moving forward? Whether they're the child that has the red or whether they're the child that has the blue, are they too growing on both sides of the spectrum? So just super excited at the work that that is happening in our schools and, you know, the opportunity to scale that. And, you know, I'm thrilled that there are so many campuses. So we were at Long. Long was, like I mentioned, they weren't a studio school, but there were teachers that were already doing the work. And so I'm really excited because I think that this scaling opportunity is going to come a lot faster than we anticipate. So great work.
And thank you to Mrs. Romero, because when we talked about studio schools, like where do we place these studio schools? She very willingly said, yes, my two can take this. And here we are years later, and let me tell you, that was the best decision that we made to apply for that grant, because it's changed the trajectory of where we are, so.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for the
you.
presentation. It's you know, it's really uplifting to know that we've got the focus in the right place and that we're, you know, we don't just dream big, right? We implement well. And it's those two things. So thank you both for the work, and I'm sure many others that you bring along with you. And thank you, Doc, for, you know, having the vision to put this in place. So, great, thank you so much. All right. I got the wrong agenda. There we go. Thank you. Future talks, like there is another topic.
So as you all know, we have started this process with strategic planning and moving towards that this fall. And so as we have our first strategic plan meeting scheduled for October 26th and 27th. And so as part of this process, we will be bringing monthly updates to how the strategic planning process is going, give you all reports on where we're at and so forth. So that will become a recurring part of our Transforming Teaching and Learning Committee over the next few months. And then, you know, we had a conversation earlier, we talked about map growth data. And so as part of our initiative around really focusing on growth and how we are moving our kids along and where is everybody, as we move into our next set of assessments, we will be bringing some of that map data back to you all so that you also can get an eye around where we are in our classroom and our student performance moving forward. So super excited at both of those items, hoping that the things that we saw today are really going to manifest themselves in student performance on these assessments. So.
Great. Look forward to that. All right. Thank you, everyone. We stand adjourned.